especially in this weather. It's a Friday, everyone's tired, but I think Ruth is worth hearing, and it's just a really wonderful experience to have you all here. That being said, Michelle is Ruth's daughter, and I've known Michelle since I was 12 years old. And I've known Ruth for as long, as Ruth has said to people tonight, I've known Stacy since she was this little, which I still am. But I have known Ruth for a long time, and she always was this sweet, kind, giving, caring woman. And for some reason, I never knew about her history. She didn't talk about it, she was happy, she just was like, she was like everyone's mom. Sorry, Mom, you were too. And so a few years ago, I think on Facebook, I saw something that either Michelle or Ellen, somebody put on Facebook a little clip of Ruth speaking about her experiences, and I was in tears, and it was so beautiful and so moving, and I thought, I really want to hear her speak. So I'm honored that she's here today, and she's here on behalf of Beijano. I'm going to let her do her own speaking, but I just want to tell you a little bit about Ruth. Ruth Fisch Kessler was born in safety in Vienna, Austria in 1933 to Helen Fisch and Charlotte Schwartz Fisch. This happy, loving family, which included her older sister Erica, however, was devastated by the events that followed in 1938. Ruth was one of 10,000 Kindertransport children taken from their homes in Germany, Austria, Czechoslovakia, and transported to Liverpool Station in London, where they were met by foster parents. Can you imagine being 5 years old and being put on a train? I don't know about anyone else, but at the thought of it, I could cry. And the thought of my son being taken away and escorted somewhere is unbelievable. And what's even more unbelievable is to come out of that and have the strength and the beauty and the love that Ruth has and shares with people and writes about it. It's a blessing to all of us. So I invite Ruth up to share her blessings with us. Somebody that makes me feel tall even. And you may want to have tissues ready. She says no.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you all for coming in this beautiful, beautiful weather.
Can you all hear?
Can you hear?
Can
Okay.
you just bring it down a little?
Just a little bit. Following the infamous Crystal Knock, which was the night of the broken glass on November the 9th, 1938, the British government decided to allow up to 10,000 children, unaccompanied Jewish children from Germany, Austria, and Czechoslovakia, into Great Britain. Operation Kindertransport saved the lives of these children who would otherwise have suffered the horrors of the concentration camps and subsequent extermination. I am a Kindertransport survivor. I was born in Vienna, Austria in 1933. Now you know how old I am. My father was a family man and owned a haberdashery shop. He was a religious man and never missed his daily prayers. My mother was a homemaker, a warm, loving woman. My parents were partners. My mother idolized my father. Our best times were at family meals and holidays. Our apartment was on a long street in a beautiful building with marble steps, overlooking a park with an ice skating rink. I could see the Austrian Alps in the distance from my bedroom window. I had a sister, Erica, 4 years older than I, and we shared a bedroom, and I looked up to her. Erica was studious and I was free-spirited. She wanted to read and study, and I wanted to dance around. I also wanted to be independent. One day at 3 years old, I walked 2 miles to my grandparents' home without telling anyone. Everyone was worried and angry with me. I was 5 years old when my parents came to me and told me they were sending me away. I did not know why. Standing on the platform, I repeatedly cried, "Are you coming soon?" "We'll see you soon," they cried in return, tears flowing. That was the last time I saw my mother and sister. I took a dark train ride across Europe and then a ship to Liverpool, England. I don't remember anyone looking after me, and I didn't make any friends. A Jewish organization called the Hayas delivered me to a London family, the Webbers, who took me home with them. They lived in the heart of London. The Webbers had 2 daughters, both older than me. I arrived in London in May 1939. I only spoke German, but I learned English in 2 weeks. I loved the Webbers, who treated me as their own. Mr. Webber owned a pub in Piccadilly Circus, frequented by lots of servicemen who gave him candy and gum to bring home to his children. The war started in London, England in September with lots of bombing. It was frightening. There were blackouts on the streets. We walked everywhere all the time carrying gas masks. We hid under the dining room table at home and under our desks at school when the air raid sounded. One day I played with a friend. The next day her home was destroyed by a bomb and she was killed. When the bombing became too severe, I was sent to the countryside along with thousands of other children for safety. I was moved to a hostel in Windermere where I lived with 15 other girls. We slept in 2 rooms. I was safe there for a year and a half, and when the bombing subsided, I was sent back to the Webbers, who meanwhile moved to a seaside community. We lived a normal life between the bombings. In 1938, my uncle, who emigrated to America, tried to get visas for my family, but failed. When he came here, he joined the American Army. During his Army days, he was sent to Europe and went to numerous camps to try and find out about my mother and sister. My father, who came to America in 1940, also tried, but was continually frustrated by the bureaucracy and failed to get my mother and sister out of Germany in time. It became too late for them. I learned that my mother and sister were deported to Poland and never heard from again after 1942. My grandparents were sent to Theresienstadt concentration camp and eventually died in Auschwitz. Most of my extended family was murdered in Auschwitz. I also learned that I was like Sophie's Choice child. My mother had to make a decision as to which daughter to put on a Kindertransport train, and she chose me because it would be harder to place an older child. I found out later that my sister made my mother's choice easier by refusing to leave her side in Vienna. In 1945, at the war's end, I was 12 years old, and my father told the Webbers that he finally can get me to America. I didn't want to go. My father was a stranger to me, and the Webbers were my mother and father. But I did what I was told. I always did what I was told. I was placed on a Swedish ship called SS Drottningholm and slept in a cabin with 3 other girls. I was seasick for 7 days out of 10. I tried to open the porthole window, but we were in steerage below the waterline. I have never been more miserable than I was then. When we arrived in New York, my uncle and aunt and father met me and took me for ice cream sundae. I discovered I didn't like ice cream. Crazy, isn't it? The irony and tragedy of my life then was when I arrived in America in 1946. My father, who was living in Boston, was limited financially and couldn't care for me. So began a 4-year placement in different foster homes. Some indifferent, some loving, some not. In 1950, my pregnant aunt, living in Philadelphia, asked me to come for the summer and help her with the baby. I jumped at the chance to live with family, and we had a great relationship. At the end of the summer, my aunt made the point that I should not go back to Boston, but continue to live with her and finish my last year of high school in Philly. And I did. I was supposed to go live with another family. I was in the first graduating class of the new Lincoln High School. In 1951, on a blind date, I met my future husband, Luke, who has been the light of my life by rock, stabilizing and grounding me so that I have been able to put all the trauma of emotional abuse behind me. Today, I have a few photos of that era and a beautiful blue crystal vase that belonged to my mother. Every time I place flowers in that vase, I lovingly memorialize her life and my memory of her. I have 3 children and 4 grandchildren. I promised them and myself that I would do everything in my power to love and protect them so they never have the fear of living the life I led from 1933 to 1950. My story is an example of where the darkest side of humanity can travel. Please don't let my Holocaust experience happen to anyone again. Don't allow the goodness in all of us to be overcome by the evil of a few. That is why I speak out today. Thank you. When I worked for the Department of Defense, they had a Holocaust week, and they asked me to say something. I said, I can't write. I am not one to put anything into a story form or anything. But I had a dear friend who happens to be my daughter's mother-in-law, who I wrote a synopsis of my life, and this is what she wrote. A scene at the train station I vividly recall, waving goodbye to one and all. I looked at my family only to see my mother hiding her tears from me. Would I see them soon? No reply, just the hope for a child of 5. As I boarded the train, I wished and prayed we would all be together in a few short days. Alone on a train, no one knowing my name, surrounded by children, all feeling the same. All Jewish by birth, thus a decree, to allow us into Great Britain, where we might become free. Arriving in London, I was quickly approached by a family of 4 who would be my coach. They wanted to show me the ins and the outs of gas masks and hiding when bombs were about. For 7 years, they housed me, gave me clothing and schooling. I felt things were better, but life was still grueling. The bombs continued with blackouts and such. For a little girl, I was seeing too much. Letters from home were not really great. I found out through the mail of my dear family's fate. My father was able to get to the States, hoping we'd join him without a long wait. My mother and sister were not as lucky as he. They were sent to a concentration camp, never to be free. Their letters stopped coming, and before very long, I knew in my heart most of my family was gone. The bombings in London continued each day, so the family I lived with sent me away. A hostel in northern England now was my home, living with girls who were also alone. For a year and a half, we shared life's ups and downs, but at least we were far from those terrible war sounds. When I was 12, I remember the day my father summoned me to the USA. I traveled by ship, seasick as could be, to meet my father, a stranger to me. He tried so hard to make me see he really had done the best for me. I loved him dearly, but it was clear to see he could not afford to really raise me. My next steps were foster homes, one after the other. I secretly longed for my sister and mother. I cried every night and prayed to be wanted and cared for eternity. Life, however, has its decree, and happiness was not meant to be. At 17, I look back on my life. 15 schools and 8 homes had been my plight. How would it end? I wondered each day. Would I ever be settled in one place to stay? Then came a phone call from an uncle and aunt. Would I come to Philly and give them a hand? Just spend the summer with us, they said. We'll clothe you, feed you, and give you a bed. I jumped at the chance to finally be part of what was my family. It worked out so well from the very first day. Without much coaxing, I decided to stay. The rest of my life, I'm happy to say, improved with each and every day. Before very long, I met my Lou, who was tender, caring, and loving too. My life turned around since our wedding day, and 3 beautiful children came our way. I'll always think back to a past so blue, but know I was lucky in many ways too. This is the end of the story. This is when in 2007, we finally got to Israel. Deep down inside, I always surmised this is when we went into Yad Vashem. Deep down inside, I always surmised my mother and sister had not survived, yet not really knowing if perhaps their fate was managing to escape through those awful gates. It took a trip to Israel and Yad Vashem for me to have proof of what happened to them. In the museum, I held back tears while entering in the computer their names and birth years. Lo and behold, for the very first time, their names appeared line after line. At the end of the printout, there appeared the word perish, thus confirming my fear. So now I have closure, no more doubt of what their short lives were all about. I continue to live with my wonderful Lou and thank God every day for the things we do. My past is behind me, still I stop and say, Yad Vashem showed me their fate that day. Last year, we went to the Holocaust Museum in Washington, D.C. And this Gail Rosenthal, who is very big with the Holocaust studies at Stockton University. And she said to me, because I had told her I don't know which camp or where they perished, she said, I'm going to call somebody at the Holocaust Museum, and we will have an appointment at 3 o'clock to see her. So we got there, and we went in at 3 o'clock, and she put my mother's name down and my sister's name, and I said, Yad Vashem had said that they were in a town called Opoli. Never heard of it. But she ordered up, and she said, yes, there were 2 camps there, Sobibor and Belzec, and they were terrible, terrible death camps. So I asked her one question. I said, let me know, did they go together? And she said, yes, they went together. That made me feel a warmth in my heart, because usually the movies that you see and everything like that, they pull the children away from the parents, and one goes one way and one goes the other. But it made me feel very calm that they went together to their death. And that's the end.
having a seasonal flowers delivered to you by Rainforest Florists each season to your home so that you can see the beauty of your vase and yourself.
I'll invite you just to be seated for a few moments.